Sagittarius, this person close to you is going to pass away. Have you ever felt something shift inside you, quietly and without warning, like a whisper brushing past your heart saying, something is ending? Maybe you've had a dream you can't quite explain, or a name from your past suddenly surfaced in your mind with no reason at all. Or maybe in the middle of your day, a wave of emotion came over you. Uninvited but undeniable. If any of this sounds familiar, then this message is meant for you. Welcome to Zodiac Wisdom. I'm Sophia, psychologist, astrologer, and your guide in this space created for women like you. If you're a Sagittarius or someone drawn to the truth-seeking spirit of Sagittarius energy, know this, you're not alone, especially not here. This channel is for women over 40, freelancers, caregivers, creators, small business owners, and soulful hearts who've spent years taking care of others and are now hearing a quiet inner call. It's time for me now. In this video, we'll gently explore something both tender and powerful. How a quiet ending, perhaps the fading presence or coming departure of someone close, can spark a return to your truest self. We'll walk together through 4 chapters that offer not just reflection, but a deeper kind of healing. One that begins not with action but with awareness. Not with noise but with a sacred whisper that says, now, you're ready. So I invite you to stay until the end, even if the topic feels heavy, because the most important part is waiting there. A moment of clarity, a turning point, maybe even your first real breath in a long time. And if something in this message touches you, I'd love for you to share it. Leave a comment below with the line, the thought, or the memory that stayed with you. You never know. Your story might be exactly what another Sagittarius soul is waiting to read. And if this space feels like something your heart's been missing, go ahead, tap like, hit subscribe, and share this video with someone you care about. Because here we don't just read horoscopes, we return to ourselves. Now take a breath. You're safe here. Let's begin. Chapter 1. When intuition speaks, listening beyond the horizon. As a Sagittarius, you've always searched for answers in faraway places. You're the eternal seeker, the optimistic adventurer, always chasing meaning just over the next horizon. But what happens when the answer you're looking for doesn't lie in the next destination, but in the silence right here, right now? Lately, you may have felt a subtle nudge, a strange dream that returned night after night, a name you hadn't spoken in years suddenly whispering into your thoughts, a heaviness in your chest unexplained, like grief that hasn't yet happened. And here's the truth. That's not random. It's not just in your head. It's intuition. And right now it's asking you to stop searching outward and start listening inward. You see, while Sagittarius is known for its logic, laughter, and love of freedom, there's something deeper inside you that most people overlook. You have a wisdom that's older than your years, an inner knowing that doesn't shout. It gently taps on the doors of your awareness when the soul is ready to hear it. And that's what this moment is about. I remember working with Jennifer, a 52-year-old small business owner from Arizona. She told me she'd started waking up at 3:11 every morning. Not in panic, just awake, a quiet awareness. One morning she sat up and whispered her late father's name, out of nowhere. The next day she got a call. Her uncle, the last sibling of her father, had just passed. I didn't see it coming, she said. But somehow I already knew. That's Sagittarius intuition. It's not always loud or logical, but when it speaks, it never lies. Right now, if you've been feeling something shifting, something ending, you don't need anyone to validate that for you. You don't need a sign. You are the sign. That feeling in your chest, that weight behind your eyes, that moment of stillness you can't explain. It's telling you that something or someone is preparing to leave. And while that might sound frightening, it's also sacred. Because for Sagittarius, endings are never just endings. They're invitations. Invitations to stop running, to stop fixing, to sit in the unfamiliar stillness and ask yourself, what truth is trying to find me? Maybe it's a truth about someone close to you. Maybe it's about yourself. Maybe it's both. Intuition is not here to predict doom. It's here to prepare your heart for what it already knows, and to soften the impact by helping you awaken before the moment arrives. Think of it as your soul's way of getting you ready, not just to say goodbye, but to grow through the goodbye. So if you're sensing something is shifting, please don't dismiss it. Don't rationalize it away. Instead, take a few minutes today to sit quietly, breathe deeply, and ask, what is my intuition trying to show me? Don't force an answer. Don't seek clarity. Just listen. Because sometimes the greatest wisdom doesn't come from books or teachings. It comes from the space between thoughts, the quiet moment before action, the feeling in your chest before a decision. And that is where your Sagittarius soul begins to come alive, not in motion but in stillness. You're not imagining it. You're remembering it. And what you're remembering is sacred. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when loss becomes a doorway, not to despair, but to deeper awakening. Because Sagittarius, this isn't just about someone else leaving. It's about the parts of you that are ready to return home. Chapter 2. Loss is not the end. It's the threshold of awakening. For so much of your life, Sagittarius, you've been moving forward, outward, upward. That's your nature. You grow through experiences, through expansion, through exploring what's beyond the present moment. And yet, sometimes the most transformative journey doesn't begin with a step forward. It begins with a pause, with a goodbye. There may be someone in your life right now, someone whose presence has faded, whose energy feels further away, even if they're still physically here. Or perhaps you've been sensing that a farewell is coming, unspoken but undeniable, and it stirs something deep in you, something that makes you stop and listen. Loss for Sagittarius can feel like a contradiction. You want to rise above it, to make sense of it, to keep going. But there are moments when the universe invites you to do the opposite. Not to outrun the pain, but to stand still in it. To let it wash over you. Not because you are weak, but because there's a lesson hidden in the sorrow. A doorway waiting to open. This is where the Ten of Swords comes in. A tarot card often feared for its depiction of painful endings, betrayal, and despair. But what many forget is that right behind the fallen figure in the card, there's a sunrise. Yes, this is an ending, but it is also the moment before rebirth. For you, Sagittarius, this card isn't a curse. It's an invitation, a message that says, this chapter is over, but something more truthful is ready to begin.
I once worked with Tara, a 46-year-old freelance writer who spent years holding on to a relationship that had long passed its purpose. She wasn't afraid of being alone. She was afraid of what she would find if she stopped distracting herself. But when her partner suddenly moved away, she was forced to sit in the silence. I cried for 3 days straight, she told me. Then on the 4th day, I felt something open inside me. A kind of peace I didn't know I was missing. That peace didn't come from fixing anything. It came from facing everything. Sagittarius, you don't need to transform pain into a project. You don't need to rush into healing like it's another adventure to conquer. Sometimes your greatest growth comes when you allow things to die naturally. An old story, an outdated dream, a role you've been playing for too long. Loss asks you to surrender, not your strength, but your resistance. It's not here to punish you. It's here to clear space, to strip away what no longer fits so that your spirit can finally breathe freely. So if someone close to you is slipping away, whether through distance, illness, or the mystery of fate, know this. Their departure is not just about them. It's about you too. It's about your ability to stay present in a moment of change. Your courage to sit with the truth, even when it breaks your heart. And your willingness to rise not in spite of that pain, but because of it. This is what spiritual maturity looks like. Not avoidance, but presence. Not detachment, but devotion to truth, to love, to what is real. Take a moment today. Don't try to explain the loss away. Don't try to replace it. Just breathe into the space it leaves. Sit with the discomfort. Light a candle if it helps. Write a letter you never send. Whisper their name with gratitude, not desperation. Let this be a sacred ritual, not to hold on, but to honor what once was. Because Sagittarius, when you allow yourself to feel the depth of what's leaving, you also make room for what's coming. And what's coming next might just be the version of you you've been journeying toward all along. In the next chapter, we'll dive into something few talk about, what it means to forgive, not for the one who left, but for yourself. Because sometimes the heaviest part of loss isn't the goodbye. It's the guilt we carry after. Chapter 3. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. Sagittarius, you've always been seen as the strong one. the uplifter, the bright flame that keeps going even when the world around you dims. You've carried optimism like a torch, lighting the way not just for yourself, but for others too. And because of that, people often forget you carry sorrow too. Quiet sorrow, the kind that settles in the spaces between all the things you never got to say. When someone you love fades away, whether through time, distance, or death, there are so many layers of grief. But one of the heaviest layers is not what was lost, it's what was left undone. The apology never spoken, the truth never shared, the final hug that never came. And while the world may tell you to let it go, your Sagittarius heart needs more than closure. It needs meaning. It needs a way to honor the unfinished. Let me tell you about Naomi. She's 58 now, a retired therapist who spent decades helping others process their pain. But when her sister passed suddenly last year, Naomi couldn't forgive herself for the distance they'd grown in recent years. They had fallen out over something small, something now meaningless, but they never reconciled. And even in the months that followed the funeral, Naomi carried a weight she didn't know how to put down. In one of our sessions, I asked her, "What would you say if she were sitting right here?" Naomi closed her eyes, and the words poured out. Not elegant, not perfect, but real. "I'm sorry. I wish I had tried harder. I still love you." Then she cried. Not because she had said too little, but because she had finally said enough. Sagittarius, forgiveness isn't something you give for someone else's sake. It's something you give to yourself, so that your heart can keep moving forward without dragging the chains of what could have been. Maybe there's someone in your life, a parent, a partner, a friend, who's already gone. Maybe you still think about them in quiet moments, wondering if they knew you cared, wondering if they forgave you, wondering if you forgave them, and maybe that wondering has become a weight. But here's the truth. You don't need them to be here to offer your forgiveness, and you don't need anyone else to witness it. Forgiveness is not a performance. It's a quiet release. It's sitting with the ache and saying, "I did my best with what I knew. I forgive myself for what I didn't know. I'm ready to let go." You can write it down, speak it aloud, whisper it under your breath. You can cry through it or sit in silence. What matters most is the intention, because once you choose to release that guilt or regret, you open up space for peace. Not the kind that comes from someone else saying, "I forgive you," but the kind that grows from inside you, steady, honest, whole. And here's something beautiful. Your act of forgiveness doesn't just heal the past. It reshapes the present. It softens the way you speak to yourself. It changes the way you connect with others. And it gives you the freedom to love again without fear of getting it wrong. So today, Sagittarius, I invite you to forgive. Not because everything is okay. Not because they said sorry. But because you're tired of carrying the story that says you weren't enough. You were. You are. And now you get to begin again with nothing held back. In the final chapter, we'll explore what happens after forgiveness. How even the smallest act of presence, writing, breathing, saying yes to yourself, can lead to the greatest kind of rebirth. Because as a Sagittarius, your healing doesn't just come from knowing the truth. It comes from living it. You don't want to rush today. Sagittarius, you've lived a life full of motion. Forward, upward, beyond. You've always believed that meaning lives somewhere in the distance, that freedom is found in movement, that becoming requires effort. But there are moments, rare and often disguised, when the most profound transformation is not in going farther, but in finally allowing yourself to land. After loss, there's an odd kind of space, not empty exactly, but quiet in a way that feels unfamiliar, like standing in a house you've lived in for years, and suddenly noticing how the light shifts on the wall when no one else is around. It doesn't ask you for answers. It only asks, "Are you still here? And what will you do with that presence?" You don't need a plan. You don't need to know what comes next. But you do need something else, honesty. The kind of honesty that says, "This is what I feel. This is what I miss. This is what I still carry." And then, from that place, not shame, not pressure, you ask yourself quietly, what would help me breathe just a little easier today? Not next month. Not when things are better. Today. I've seen people start over without changing anything around them. I've watched a woman pour her morning coffee into a new cup, not because the cup mattered, but because it made the moment feel fresh. I've seen another write a letter she never sent, and in doing so, cleared out a part of her chest that had been aching for years. These were not big acts, but they were true, and that made them sacred.
Sagittarius, you don't need another escape. You need to find freedom right where you are. In the breath before the next decision. In the pause before the reply. In the simple act of not forcing yourself to feel better, just to feel what you feel without judgment. There's a grace in simplicity, a dignity in slowness, a kind of quiet miracle in showing up for your own life. Not with fireworks, but with gentle consistency. It's in the way you water a plant you nearly let die. The way you step outside barefoot just to feel the earth again. The way you place your hand on your chest and whisper, "I'm still here." And you are. You are here, Sagittarius. Not the version of you from before the loss. Not the one who had all the answers, but the one who has learned to stay with the questions, to sit with the ache, to start over, not with ambition but with presence. This is not about reinventing yourself. It's about reclaiming the parts of you that you forgot you didn't need to earn. The calm, the softness, the clarity that comes when you stop performing your strength and simply rest in it. So don't rush to rise. You're not behind. You're not broken. You're in the in-between. And that's where true transformation begins. Let it be quiet. Let it be yours. And when you're ready, when something inside you says yes, take one small loving step. Not because you should, but because you can. Chapter 4. The quiet return, when small things make all the difference. Not every beginning comes with clarity or celebration. Sometimes it arrives in the quietest way. In the middle of your morning routine, when something ordinary suddenly feels different. You pause. You breathe. And for a moment you realize you don't want to move as fast as you used to. For Sagittarius, a sign born to explore, this may feel unfamiliar. You've always chased truth out there. On the road, in the unknown, in something new to learn or somewhere else to be. But there are moments when the real journey asks you not to go anywhere at all. Not to chase, but to choose. Not to expand outward, but to come home to yourself. After loss or emotional unraveling, we're often told to start fresh. To find meaning quickly, to heal efficiently. But rebirth, in its most authentic form, isn't loud or immediate. It's a quiet return. A return to presence. To tenderness. To simple honesty about how you feel right now, without needing to justify or fix it. This isn't about grand gestures. It's not about making your pain productive. It's about choosing one thing, one moment that feels real, even if no one else sees it. It might be sipping your tea slowly instead of gulping it between tasks. It might be walking outside barefoot for the first time in months just to remind yourself you're still part of the earth. It might be taking a deep breath before saying yes to something and asking, "Do I really want this?" These are not solutions. These are sacred pauses. And Sagittarius, you need these pauses. Not because you're broken, but because you're human. You don't need to reimagine your life. You only need to reconnect with it, softly and sincerely. And when you do, when you make that small intentional choice to return to yourself, you begin something greater than healing. You begin re-inhabiting your own soul. So don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait until it feels like you've earned a second chance. You already have. Choose one small thing today that supports the part of you that's quietly rising again. Let it be simple. Let it be yours. Because the fire that burns in Sagittarius doesn't always roar. It flickers, it steadies, it glows in the dark, and it leads you home not with force, but with grace. You've just walked through something tender, personal, and quietly transformative. And if you're still here, Sagittarius, then know this. You didn't just listen, you felt. You didn't just understand, you remembered. You remembered that healing doesn't come in grand declarations, but in honest moments. You remembered that your strength isn't in your ability to move on quickly, but in your willingness to stay present with your truth. And you remembered that no matter how much you've given to the world, you are still worthy of giving something back to yourself. So let me ask you, which part of this journey felt like it was written just for you? Was there a sentence, a memory, a feeling that stayed with you? Leave a comment below and tell me, because your voice matters. Your story could be the very thing another Sagittarius woman needs to hear today. And if this message spoke to you in any way, I invite you to take a simple step. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone you know who's navigating their own quiet turning point. Let's grow this space together. A place where deep feelers and seekers like you can come home, not to who you were, but to who you're becoming. Because we're not done here. In fact, we're only just beginning. In the next episodes, we'll explore how Sagittarius women can build soulful relationships, reconnect with lost passions, and embrace their purpose in a way that feels free, real, and completely their own. So stay close. Keep coming back. And until then, remember this. The smallest step taken from a place of truth is more powerful than any perfect plan. So if all you do today is choose yourself with love, that's enough. That's more than enough. You are light, Sagittarius. And this world needs more of it, starting with you.